So basically what you're saying is that you're supporting the parties to interact or to communicate about things they want to communicate.
Absolutely.
And not impose some other topics or issues that they don't care about.
One of the myths about transformative mediation is that our aim is to transform their relationship and to make sure that they repair that relationship and stay connected and like each other. That is not the goal of transformative mediation. Sometimes that happens as a result of people understanding each other better, being able to express themselves, figuring out what they want in the conflict, and they can continue on in a much more productive way with the relationship. Other times, the parties realize through a better quality of interaction in the mediation that they can't continue together. But the quality with which they make that decision, the quality with which they understand themselves and each other and why the relationship cannot continue is different if the process is done transformatively. And so that too is success in transformative mediation, an understanding of why two co-workers cannot continue to work together, an understanding of why certain neighbors have to not talk or move apart. But they're not just reacting to each other in making that decision, they're making it much more reflectively with greater understanding of themselves and the other person.
You mentioned two workers being able or not able to work together. Does it mean that it can be used in companies as well, before the court case is made?
Absolutely. That was the nature of the program we did with the U.S. Postal Service, which was a very large program that was about equal opportunity disputes, discrimination disputes. The parties always had the right to take the conflict further in terms of a hearing or a court process. But the mediation was offered initially to see if parties could talk through an understanding about what happened, why they felt someone discriminated, and then decide whether or not they wanted to go on or they felt satisfied by the discussion and whatever happened in the mediation.
So is it worthwhile for the companies to try to implement mediation in their daily functioning?
I think it's important to have conflict resolution processes like mediation in large organizations, small organizations, because many times people do not find the opportunity or make the opportunity to talk to each other about difficult issues. And those difficult issues can create great dissatisfaction with people, can cause them to leave the organization, be costly to the organization as a result, or impair the work between people because they're not communicating. And so when there's issues, the ability, the option of letting people go to mediation to talk through their differences with someone who has no investment in the outcome at all and is there not to solve the problem for them, but to help them figure out a way to communicate. That process can have an upstream effect on the quality and the culture of the organization, because people then leave the mediation realizing it is possible to talk about things that are challenging, difficult with somebody else, and they can do that or have more confidence that they can do that without a mediator even, by going through mediation. So you can spread the abilities of conflict processes, parties and members of the organization's ability to talk about differences generally.
It sounds very nice, but in companies it's also about money, and mediation costs something. What would be the reasons for the owners or directors to invest, to give some amount of money for mediation?
Well, there's huge economic cost to conflict in organizations, and some of that is the cost if an employee has a conflict with the manager and takes them to court or takes them to hearings. The need for a company to have lawyers, etc., is huge. That in and of itself is very costly. And if parties reach understandings and agreements about how to move forward without that, that's huge. That was a big factor in the U.S. Postal Service interest in having a transformative mediation process. However, there's other costs to conflicts. If people are afraid to talk through issues and they just decide, I can't take this anymore, I am going to leave this organization, then the turnover and the costs of training new people and the loss of talent and the loss of relationships with clients are often huge to an organization.
So you're saying that it can cost a lot more to the company if they don't invest in mediation,
Exactly.
rather than being mediation a cost that would be
Exactly.
unnecessary. So, if it sounds so good and so nice, the transformative mediation, why is not every mediator transformative or using transformative approach? Why are there other like problem solving or evaluative types of mediation?
Well, I think that there's several reasons, I would say, for that. One is historically, one of the first models of mediation that was developed was the problem-solving method. It was the only one as the alternative dispute resolution field emerged, especially in the United States. And so people just resonated with it or just went to it because it was there. And it served a good function. And it served a function strategically for especially the courts because it was so focused on settlement and agreement. And the courts many times wanted cases to be removed at all costs, so they required very high settlement rates. The way of doing mediation in some of the other models is so geared towards settlement that settlement rates can be high, but what mediators do is focus on the agreement, not on supporting the parties' quality of interaction, which is really the promise of mediation. No other forum really serves that function. You can go to court, you can go to arbitration, you can go to a hearing and have someone come up with a fair, legal, creative settlement, but that does nothing to help the parties figure out how to interact about their issues and build their capacity for strength of self and simultaneously connection with other people who are different than them. So the idea is that although those models serve a function in some settings and are productive and useful, they don't do what mediation can uniquely do. And that's why I'm concerned, and that's why I think people gravitate toward the transformative model, because they know that that's the only form with third-party intervention in alternative dispute resolution that builds that those capacities of people.
So if the value of transformative approach is to support human interaction or the capacity to interact constructively, why would, for example, courts use transformative approach if they only are interested in settlement, in getting rid of disputes or solving the disputes and not necessarily changing interaction between parties?
Well, because the truth is that why people are going to court over such things is because of differences and escalation of conflict and, not connecting with people who have differences and feeling as if it's all about my rights and not realizing there's rights of others. And we need forums in society supported by the courts that deal with and support people's capability, to deal with difference. And so it should be a mission of the courts not just to settle cases, but to help people in society, interact. So take, for example, neighbor disputes or small claims disputes. These are things that are not huge issues if it's, less than $1,000 worth of goods or money, or neighbor disputes about dogs and other things. This goes on every day in communities and apartment complexes. And the courts, by just settling those, are not helping to encourage people to figure out how to live with difference and how to interact. So the circle of creating more and more cases continues, and the courts get more and more backlog because no capacity is being built for people to deal with difference generally. The courts in the United States and other countries, in Italy, I'm not sure how crowded it is in Slovenia, but are overloaded with cases that are based on the fact that people are just saying, I'll just take you to court. I won't deal with the fact that your dog is barking and it's bothering me, and can we talk through what we do about this? They don't feel capable of doing that, so instead they go to court. If we don't have at least one forum that supports that, then the courts just keep getting more and more overcrowded, and we don't deal with the fundamental incapacities of people to deal with conflict.
So what you're saying is that reaching only settlement doesn't really solve the problem, and the problem lies in interaction, that people cannot interact constructively and resolve the issues by themselves.
Most solutions to problems are not difficult. Some of them are quite obvious, what's fair, what's right, but why can't the parties get there? Why can't the parties do that on their own? That's really the question, and people need support and confidence that they can have those kind of conversations to come up with those kind of solutions on their own. That's what transformative mediation tries to do.
So what you're saying, it's not about the solution that is fairly simple most of the cases, but about the capacity to interact in order to
get
reach
there
the solution
together.
together.
Exactly.
That's great. That's great. These are great thoughts. And Joseph, thank you for being here in Slovenia and for leading this great seminar and for giving these answers to these questions. And maybe one final thought for Slovenian mediators in terms of transformative approach. What would you say to them?
I would say have the courage to try an approach to mediation which asks you as a mediator to be comfortable with conflict and to learn how to work with conflict rather than contain it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco.